Hey, so this is part 2 of hip opening, and one key is to identify the poses that come before the peak pose in your mind. The peak pose is different for everybody, but if the peak pose, let's say for you, is a leg behind the head or 2 legs behind the head, we've already identified that's a knee flexion, an external rotation of the hip, and a flexion of the hips. And so any poses that also have some of those ingredients are preparations for that. And in particular, the standing poses in the Ashtanga sequence are really, really potent for opening the hips. Triangle, reverse triangle, side angle, and even reverse or revolve side angle. But definitely those first 3, Trikonasana, Parivrtta Trikonasana, and Parshvakonasana. Without necessarily doing the vinyasa for it, but let's say I'm coming into triangle on the left side. And so this is, okay, also let me take a step back and say that everybody also has different sets of limiting muscles for the movement. Some people the external rotation is more difficult, some people the hamstrings it's more difficult to get the flexion. Some people it's in the adductors, or it's in the glutes, or it's in the lower back, the upper back. It could be combinations of different places. So being a scientist and identifying that on yourself will also help when you focus on these preparation poses. So for me, it's mostly the external rotators and the adductors are the limiting factor in leg behind the head. And so when I'm in triangle, I'm identifying the spotlights of my legs. I'm pushing through my feet almost as if I'm trying to separate my feet. My legs are engaged, but it's the locking the knee is not about pushing the knee back. It's about engaging all the muscles around the knee, including the back of the knee. So when I come into Trikonasana, it's important not to let the butt come out. If the butt comes out, that limits how much external rotation I'm getting at the hip. If I tuck the butt under, which is all from the rim of the pelvis to and the floating ribs, this area needs to contract or flex. That's what prevents the butt. Let me see if I can show. So it's butt out, butt in. Butt out, butt in. So tucking, let's say, the front leg butt cheek under and wrapping the coccyx forward, so it points forward like a tailbone. And identifying the spotlights is a preparation for leg behind the head. So just explore how Trikonasana can externally rotate the hip in preparation for leg behind the head. It's the same thing for Parivrtta Trikonasana. So here you're definitely feeling the sensation of the IT band elongating, so that's good as far as the preparation for leg behind the head. And always soft knees, but engagement. So spotlights, I can't emphasize that enough, because what ends up happening is in the pursuit of leg behind the head, you end up elongating the connective tissues around the pelvis, which, especially the SI joint, so the sacrum and 2 iliums. There's a lot of connective tissues there that we end up collapsing into those because we don't have very much proprioception there. We don't really feel when those are stretching. We feel when they're hurting, when there's sharpshooting pains in the SI. And we want to localize that stretching more to the IT band, the TFL, the glutes, all those other muscles. We want to stretch the muscles and not the tissues that are connecting bones to bones. Okay, and then really, really important, and I'm doing this all on my left side because my left is my less flexible side, so this is a good warm-up for me. When I come into side angle, this is an external rotation of the thigh. Explore it for yourself. This is an external rotation of the thigh and a flexion of the hip. It's also an abduction, so this is basically a leg behind the head. If I go forward and down, that's leg behind the head. Okay? So I'm in the side angle, the hand comes down. Now I push, there's an active force between the front knee and the arm, and that's going to contract the glutes and the external rotators. So as the vector of force is this way and my arm is resisting that, the glutes and the external rotators are flexing. And one principle in stretching, although I forget the name of the principle, when one muscle is flexing, its antagonist tends to release. And so as you flex the external rotators of the hip, the adductors tend to relax. And that will help with the external rotation of the leg. So explore how Trikonasana, Parivrita Trikonasana, and Parshvakonasana, Parshvakonasana are preparing you for a leg behind the head. How those motions are similar, and really bring your awareness to how are my legs clarifying my spine. That's super important. I can't emphasize that enough. Trust me, I've dealt with my share of injuries of trying to force leg behind the head, and it comes down to being, one, content with it might not happen today, it might not happen this year, so on. And two, really finding stability and firmness and solidarity through the hips, and allowing your legs to clarify that, to clarify where is your pelvis. It's a mantra I say to myself a lot during my yoga practice. I'll say, how are my legs clarifying my spine? How are my legs clarifying my pelvis? Where is my pelvis in space? And then obviously Uddiyana Bandha is super important when we get to leg behind the head, but I'll explain that more later. All right.